Welcome back to Elster's Rifles and Reloading. And we got another busy day in the Elster's Reloading room. Matter of fact, I am stripping some good old brass stoppers here. We got a good old solution here that strips the zinc off the brass stoppers for the EP 2.0 annealer. And we got the first batch completely in boxes, ready for shipment. We just got to wait for a couple things behind the scenes in regards to the business of EP Integrations LLC. And we're going to get those out here really soon, at least the first batch to those that sent the very first emails to get on that waiting list. But, you know, it's kind of a slow Sunday here, and I figured, you know what, I'm going to drop some powder here, and I'm dropping some Varget. And I'm once again stockpiling my favorite pet load of 60 grain VMAX bullets here with 23.8 grains of Varget. And it's winter time. It's a perfect time to stockpile on those freedom seeds. And I know some of you guys have seen me reload this before, and I like to have a good amount of this stockpiled up, ready to go when I hit the range. And this is once fired Lake City brass, 60 grain VMAX, CCI 400 primers, 23.8 grains of Varget. I got a head space set at 1.4515 and a coal of 2.255 plus or minus 1/1000 of an inch. At least that's what I shoot for. Pretty much max magazine length. And I am dropping some unobtainium here, which is also known as Varget, which is damn near impossible to get right now. But let me make sure that my sound and video is good to go, and it looks like it is. So yeah, if you're out there watching, make sure you jump in the chat room and say hello, especially if you're new to the game. Let me know, hey, new to reloading. And I'd like to know that. I'd like to get a connection with my viewers of Elster's Rifles and Reloading. And it looks like good old John Towley's already #1 in the Elster's Reloading room saying, how's it going? And he says, how can I get on the list for the EP 2.0? As a matter of fact, if you check out the description box below, I have a link to all the social media platforms for EP integrations. And I believe there's also an email down there, epintegrations@hotmail.com. That website for EP integration is pretty much done. I just got to hit publish once I add the accounts to it, so you can order that directly online. But initially, we are going to be going off an email list, and it's quite an extensive email list at that. So we're going to whittle our way through that email list, and hopefully we can get through that. And there's a lot of demand for this annealer. I'm not going to say how many is on the list, but let's just say it's extensive. And we're going to work our way right down that list. First come, first serve. If you were the first one to email us, you are going to get the first notification on how to place that order. And we're doing it in batches. And I'm not going to say how big the batches are. The first batch was not the biggest batch, but the second batch and the third batch is pretty big. And let's just say some of these batches are already filled up with emails. So if you want to get on that email list, check out the description box below, which is epintegrations@hotmail.com, and just send us your name, any information, your name, phone number, and we'll get you on that list. And as we work our way down that email list, hopefully we'll get to the point where we don't have an email list anymore, and we could just load up the website with whatever amount of annealers we have to sell. And when those sell out, we're going to make another batch, and we'll rinse and repeat. And once we get through that email list, and who knows how long that'll be, because I mean, like I said, it's quite extensive. Like I said, if you want to get your hands on this EP 2.0 annealer that can anneal from 300 blackout to 50 BMG, well, have to add or remove any parts. Right now it's $268, shipped to lower 48 states. You know, this is designed by someone that precision reloads, and if you're annealing less than 200 pieces, it is the go-to annealer, my opinion. And I'm just not saying that because I'm selling it. The fact that you don't have to screw around adding or removing any parts, and I've said this before, I'll say again, regardless if you're feeding a hopper or if you're feeding the fence, you're still feeding the machine, especially at 200 pieces or less. And for me personally, like just now, it's pretty rare for me to reload in batches over 100 pieces. You know, it's usually 50 pieces for larger cartridges and 100 pieces for smaller cartridges like 223 here. So the fact that it's 5 to 6 seconds per anneal, this doesn't really make much of a difference to me. But I figured, you know what, I'm doing some reloading and I'd have you guys join in on the chat. And especially if you got any questions, concerns, make yourself known. We could do a little bit of a chat in here while I drop some Varget powder here with the FX120i. When I'm dropping 23.8 grains of Varget, and we're dropping seed in these freedom seeds. So Justin Price saying, love me some Varget. Load it in 3 cartridges currently. Reloader 762 sounds and looks good. And I'm currently now using a corded lavalier, so hopefully that audio is spot on. No more crackling like the wireless audio that I was doing before. So hopefully that is permanently fixed along with a good video. I think that's important for any channel. So Jason Hunt saying hello from Tennessee. Wonder Wing says, anybody know where tumblers are in stock? So you mentioned tumbler. Matter of fact, that's what I started out on. I actually have one right here, and it's a good product. But then again, my opinion, it was a good product 8 years ago. I'm not saying you shouldn't get a tumbler, but in my opinion, why get the tumbler when you can get the Frankfurt Arsenal? Matter of fact, you can see I have both. And the reason why I still keep the tumbler is for one reason only, is once in a while, I like to reload and clean brass of 2 different cartridges at one time. And I actually have I have this modification. Matter of fact, I have a video on my video list. It's one of my very first videos I've ever did many years ago. And that's the tumbler partition mod, where you can actually take the lid off of this, and being that it's hexagonal, you can actually slide this partition mod and divide the cavity of the tumbler in half by using this partition mod. And man, I've had this for 8 years. I've, no joke, have tumbled thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces with a tumbler with this partition mod. No joke, what I'll do is I'll take the lid off, slide in this partition mod. I'll put, for example, 50 pieces of 308 brass on one side, 100 pieces of 223 brass on the other, and I'll tumble them at the same time. Or, especially if you're doing something like pistol cartridges, one of the worst things you can do is just throw a bunch of different types of pistol cartridges, brass, in a tumbler, especially something like 9mm 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP. And what will happen if you don't separate that brass before you put it in the tumbler is those 9mm brass pieces will nest inside of the 45 ACP, and especially with stainless steel media, those pieces will get so lodged into the 45 ACP, it'll nest inside of it, that you can barely pull them out with pliers, and that's no joke. So if you're tumbling any type of pistol brass, make sure that you are separating out the different types of cartridges before you wash them, especially if you're doing something like wet tumbling with stainless steel media, and especially pins. They're notorious for getting stuck with pins. So with that being said, if I want to clean a bunch of 9mm and 45 ACP to make sure that they don't nest inside of each other, I'll use this partition mod. And that's the sole purpose why I keep this around, is if I'm reloading both, I want to clean both, I want to cut my time in half because I can clean both at the same time, in essence, I'll use this mod. And that's really the only reason why I ever use this. Other than that, my opinion, there's no other reason not to get the Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler. Much larger capacity, just easier to use, it rolls better. Obviously, it's got a timer. You know, back before that came out, when I first started many years ago with the tumbler, you can see I got a timer right here. It's a timer I got off Amazon. Matter of fact, if you have a tumbler, you can put a timer on it. And I bought this off Amazon, And this is a two-piece package. You can see the other part of this is controls the power. This controls the time. And I got that specifically hooked up to my thumbless tumbler because it doesn't have a timer where the Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler does. So if you're starting out right now, I would recommend getting the Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler. It really is hard to beat, especially for the money. And I think, usually you can get that on Amazon. I believe I have one of my Amazon affiliate links in the description box below for that. And I only recommend products that I use and I approve. And I think you can usually get that once in a blue moon for, I don't know, about 150 bucks, I think, off the top of my head. But it's worth every single penny. And if you're going to do it, I would highly suggest using not the pins that come with the Frankfurt Arsenal. Let's see if I could do this without dropping this humongous glass of Southern Shine media. But ditch the pins and get this Southern Shine media. Matter of fact, I just got doing a video on this stuff. This is 20 pounds. It's pretty darn heavy. And you always store your stainless steel media away wet. If it's true stainless steel, you don't have to worry about it rusting ever, regardless if it's in water or not. And I've seen guys trying to dry their stainless steel media before they put it away after a reloading session. I'm like, what are you doing, man? What are you drying your stainless steel media when you're done? God, it's just a lot of screwing around. But I don't know. Hopefully that helps answer your question there, Wonder Wing. And I personally would not get a thumbless tumbler. I would get the Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler, and they're notorious for being on sale on Amazon all the time. So hopefully that answers your question. We get some water here. So Barry Danix in the house saying good afternoon. John Townley is saying, guess I missed the email list, but been wanting one since you talked about it with Rick and Ray. And thanks, Todd. Yeah, so check out that description box for the email list below. And definitely send an email if you want to get on that. Because if you want one, you better send an email now or you're going to be way behind the curve. So Daniel, God is my judge. And I know that guy's on the email list. He's saying, yo. So Nick Knight saying, I once cleaned a bunch of range brass, all straight wall pistol brass with fine walnut media. Didn't sort. I had so many stuck cases inside each other, I swore I would never do that again. And man, is that ever the truth? So if you're new and you're about to, regardless of how you're cleaning that brass, you better make sure you sort that straight walled pistol brass before you clean it. You never want to mix it because trust me, it will get stuck. They'll nest inside each other. You'll never get it out. So Wonder Wing saying, yeah, but fart is China right? TT is USA made correct? Not exactly sure what you're asking there. So Crazy Gearhead saying, Happy New Year, everyone. And John Talley saying, just sent that email. Thank you, Todd. And once we get done here, I will send you an email back and pretty much auto logs you into the email list. But I'll make sure you're on there, my good friend. So like I said, I'm dropping some Varget powder here. I'm actually getting to the tail end of this 8-pound jug, and thank God I stockpile. Because if you guys aren't hooking up while the prices and the easy access is getting good, you better do it. I think I got another 8-pound jug back here. Let me stuff check. Yeah, I got another 8-pound jug of unobtainium here. So I don't know. I think if I can find another 8-pound jug, I'll be right as rain. I don't think I can get any more powder or primers in this damn cabinet. And if you are new, I highly suggest getting something metal cabinet that's not sealable for your powder and primers. You definitely don't want to get a sealable cabinet, because if you do, you can create obviously what's called the BOMB. And I just like to leave the doors loose. And in the good old Wisconsin, most houses around here have a basement. And being that it's a basement, And God forbid if there ever was a fire, try to get that cabinet as low to the floor as possible. I kind of mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again, is if, especially in my house that's new and has PEX pipe, if there ever was a fire, that PEX pipe that runs through my house is probably going to turn into a water sprinkler. And most damage that's occurred during a fire is actually done through water, not only from the fire department throwing a bunch of water in your house, but also from your plumbing springing a leak. And usually, more times than not, your basement turns into a big swimming pool. And that's why I like to get my powder as low as I possibly can get it, at least my powder and primers. Obviously, heat rises, flames rises, and usually it's hard for flames to go down. Usually they want to go up. So that's usually why I try to keep my powder as low as I possibly can in a steel cabinet. It's hard to believe, but you know, if you actually read Sammy's specs in regards to how you should store your powder, they actually recommend that you store it in a wood cabinet, a non-sealable wood cabinet. Not exactly sure what the reasoning is behind that. I think it has something to do with the burn rating to get through a cabinet, but it's not completely sealed. I've always found that quite interesting, but at least for me, I like to use a steel cabinet here that's not sealed, and obviously with the doors just shut with a magnet. So, so reloader 62 saying, oh sure, Bart, Frankfurt Arsenal, the tumblers down there. All right, makes sense now. So G-Ball at the in-laws. That's an awesome name. Did you end up getting a PSA AK-74? And did you think of it? And yes, I was kicking around getting one. For those that are unfamiliar with the AK-74, it doesn't shoot 7.62 by 39. It shoots a 5.45 cartridge. And I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. I know guys are dying to get their hands on that, but I'll be honest with you, I would rather have the 5.56 AK that they're eventually going to come out with, for several reasons. That 5.45 ammo for the AK-74 is, especially right now, it's not easy to get. It's kind of expensive, and you know what? The reason why I'd rather have the 5.56 because of this. I have an insane amount of Lake City brass. I'm not joking you. This whole bin here is nothing but 5.56 Lake City brass. And there's got to be at least 5,000 pieces of Lake City brass. As a matter of fact, I just purchased. Matter of fact, I'm going to clip you guys out here. Just give me a second. Just got to grab this box. Sorry for the audio. Just give me 1 second. I guess apparently it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I recently, and some of you guys have seen this before, not only is that whole bin filled to the brim with really cheap, inexpensive 5.56 Lake City brass, but I have my old batch here still at the bottom. This filing cabinet of the remaining 1,000 pieces I bought from a good friend of mine off of Facebook. I bought 1,000 pieces of once fired, all matching head stamp 5.56 Lake City brass. $80 shipped, which right now is absolutely phenomenal. Back here I got some good old Starline I got from Brownells and a good deal. And I got just a metric crap ton of once fired 243 here that a good friend of mine that hunts. He doesn't reload. He just gives me his 243. I'm never going to turn away brass. That's for damn sure. But just recently, I just bought another 1,000 pieces of Lake City once fired matching head stamp. And the guy that sent it to me, he felt bad it took so long to send it to me that he kicked in some extra. Man, oh man, did he ever kick in some extra. I only bought 1,000 pieces from him for $80, and he sent me all this. For crying out loud. He's like, you know, I'm just gonna throw in some extra there. The other Ziploc bags don't have matching head stamps, but everything else in the bag I sorted out for you that has matching head stamps. So he sent me that and this, and then he's like, you know what, I'll kick in some extra 7.62 by 51. So here you go. Why don't you just take some of that? I mean, like, just an awesome guy. But then he says, you know, I actually got all this matching head stamps, and he actually cleaned it too. So I got, no joke, at 80 bucks for all that. I mean, I got, you know, usually with a semi-automatic and a 5.56 AR, I'm usually getting, I don't know, this is already once fired, so you got to keep that in mind. So you're already starting out of the gate with one fire. And I'm probably going to get an additional 4 to 5 fires out of this before the primer. It's usually the primer pockets get so darn loose that I can't reload it anymore. Or I start to see split necks in the case mouth openings. And then that's usually when I start throwing away. If I see one, I might just throw away that one. But when I start seeing 2 or 3, or especially when I'm seating those primers, and they feel pretty loose to the point where I don't feel the tension of the primer seating into the pocket anymore. Usually I'll write that down on my info card, and I'll say trash after fire. That tells me when I'm done firing that it goes in this bin, which is called the bad brass bin. And this is like the black hole of the reloading room. Once brass goes into this bin, it never comes out for no reason whatsoever, other than maybe using it for test brass for setting up my annealer in regards to the speed and heat of flame. And some of you guys have probably seen that before. But yeah, needless to say, that is why I want to get my hands on that PSA 5.56, because I can reload for it, not only stupid cheap, but you'd be amazed that the 5.56 Lake City cartridge that you can reload is by far, in my opinion, a more superior round in comparison to the 7.62 by 39. Yeah, other than maybe energy foot-pounds, but when it comes to pure accuracy, the 5.56 is going to absolutely destroy the 7.62 by 39. And just because of its ballistics. And I can reload precision ammo doing exactly what I'm doing here with once fired Lake City brass, dropping 23.8 grains of Varget and dropping the magic freedom seeds. No matter what I put this 60 grain VMAX in, as long as it has a 1 in 8 twist and a barrel length of 16 inches or longer, it just performs. And that's my pet load. And that's why I like stockpiling this. That's probably why you guys see me reload this so many damn times. Is it just performs no matter what I put it in. Like I said, as long as it has a barrel length of 16 inches plus, 1 in 8 twist, this just performs. Especially out of my Rock River 20-inch varmint bull barrel. Even my Rock River Arms 18-inch ATH. But I have tried this out of my 10.5-inch 5.56 AR PSA AR pistol, and it didn't do so well. It was pretty good, but doing load development, the 55 grain VMAX with XBR 8208 completely destroyed it, and it wasn't even close. And that was with a 1 in 7 twist, and I've kind of explained this before. You'd think with a 1 in 7 twist that it would prefer heavier bullets, but that barrel length is so short at 10.5 inches. With a 1 in 7 twist, that bullet is only making 1.5 revolutions before it exits the muzzle. 1 in 7 twist, it's making 1 full revolution in 7 inches of barrel. I only got 10.5 inches of barrel, so it's making 1 full revolution in 7 inches, and it's exactly getting another half a revolution before it exits the barrel. And that's why they put those super fast twist rates on those short barrel SBRs and pistols, because there isn't much barrel to spin the freedom seed. So you got to make sure that you're you're getting a nice twist on there, and it actually prefers a lighter bullet in comparison to the heavier bullets in those short barrels. And I have those videos to prove it in that playlist with the PSA 10.5-inch 5.56 AR pistol. I show the load development completely in that, with 77 grain, 68 grain, 60 grain, and 55 grain, and the 55 grain destroyed everything, even with a 1-in-7 twist. So I thought it was quite interesting. So let's see here. So G-Ball at the in-laws. Hopefully that answers your question. And not only am I looking forward to getting that 5.56 PSA AR AK, sorry, let me say that again. The PSA 5.56 AK, the full length, not the pistols. Not only because I can reload for it stupid cheap, but it has a last round bolt hold, which is non-existent in the AK world, and it also takes PMags. And it also has an adjustable gas block. I don't know if you guys know that or not. Matter of fact, when I went to SHOT Show here in 2020, went to the PSA booth, and I did pretty much a video on it. It seemed like every single development product they have coming out here soon. I was actually the most excited for that 5.56 AK because of those main reasons. Last round bolt hold, PMags, adjustable gas block, and I can reload for it dumb cheap. That's why I want that rather than the AK-74, especially for the reloader. In my opinion, that's the AK for the reloader. So not saying you can't reload for, 5.45, but obviously I'm sitting on a mountaintop of once fired Lake City grass. So Reloader 762 saying, wondering if you just want a thumbless tumbler, Amazon has 10 in stock for $340. So what else we got? Matter of fact, what I'm really excited for from PSA is that Jackal. I also have a video of that when I talked to Dale at PSA in regards to the Jackal. And it's not out yet, but they're supposedly supposed to be coming out with in it both 5.56 and 300 blackout. And I don't really reload for 300 blackout, but I'm really looking forward to that in the 5.56. And not only is that Jackal have a monolithic upper, there is no upper receiver with a threaded, separate handguard. It's one whole monolithic upper, but it has adjustable gas block. It takes any AR-15 lower, and it's just a really compact package. It has an ambidextrous controls, ambidextrous side charging, adjustable gas block. I mean, once that comes out, it's going to be hard to really own anything else in any world in regards to a short barrel SBR or pistol of some sort, if their braces are still out here in the future, but whatever. So yeah, that Jackal is what I'm really looking forward to. But he says, I have a PSA VP 103, debating the 74, and really been looking at the ZPA P85 5.56. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to that 5.56 from PSA. And the second that comes out, I am hooking up with that for sure. No doubt about it. So DM Racer 321 saying the Hornady Auto Charge Pro is coming in this week. Love how compact it is. We'll see how it performs. Yeah, and that's, if you're especially just starting out in the reloading world, I think it's I never used it personally, but I think that would be a decent powder drop. I started with the Charge Master over here. My personal opinion, this is the absolute minimum that I would recommend getting. You can usually get these Charge Masters now, rather inexpensive. Usually for, a little over $250 if you keep an eye out on them. But, obviously if you want to go completely insane and drop a little over $1,000, you can always get the FX120i. So, and see here. So yeah, Matthew was saying, enjoy using 5.56, converts out the blackout. Yeah, if you want to cut down and trim those brass pieces, you can definitely do that. I just noticed in the video my tag sticking out like a dork. So So Clark Gable is rolling in. He's saying, salutations, ladies and gents. Nice to have you here. So I'm gonna murder your last name here. GA Crazy Cajun. So he's saying I've done a bunch of conversions of 5.56 to 300 blackout. Bought the Dillon 1500 trimmer and run it on my 650. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go, is running on a progressive for sure. Wonder King saying, I worked up a ladder for those 60 grain VMAX with CFV 223 and they shot great at 26.4 grains out of my 1-7 twist. You know, I've tried CFV 223 before in the past numerous times and I just never had luck with it. My go-to powder, and why I have tons of it, is Varget for 223 and 308, and I have a metric boatload of H4350. Thank God I stocked up on that when I did. So DM Racer 321 saying, more excited about the PSA Jackal. I'm in the same boat with you. So my main things I'm looking out for from PSA is the Jackal and that 5.56 AK. Oh man, I just like the heritage. You know, obviously AKs aren't really inherently accurate. I just like the heritage of them, and that's why I like having AKs. I got an AKV, I got an AKP. Matter of fact, PSA has those the 12.5 inch AK pistols now. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on one of those in comparison to the 10.5 inch. But yeah, we'll see. Mr. Lovell saying, I'm building a poor man's Scar 16 with a WWSD 2020 lower, so that's interesting. I can't even pronounce your name there, but Nancy Pelosi's brain dried up. Gosh, no joke. Let's see here. So Jim Laram saying Happy New Year's, Todd. And Thomas Tech saying hello, Happy New Year. And Mr. Lovell saying Area 419 progressive, really nice. So, but yeah, let's drop some powder here. I've already kind of dropped and seeded some Freedom seeds here, 50 total. But I figured I'd have you join me on the remaining 50 here. And this is the FX120i. I know a lot of guys have already seen this, but if you haven't, this is, I would say, the top of the line in regards to dropping powder, but I would say it's close second. And it's super sensitive, man. I can't even breathe on this thing. It's how sensitive it is. And it's a straight up lab scale. And it's the FX120i. And the 120i stands for 120 grains. It can measure up to 120 grains. They also make an FX120i. Sorry, not grains, grams. But usually with even the 120i, it's going to cover everything you're going to want to do in the reloading world. I got this from Data Weigh-In Systems, shipped with the autotrickler.com V3 combo unit for it was a little over $1,000 once you figure in the shipping and tax and all that good stuff. And then I added in the Area 419 tray and the pans here, and I got 2 pans here. I know some of you guys have seen this before, but if you haven't, I got 2 pans here, Area 419 pans that I made weigh the exact same amount. They're roughly about 750.70 total grains. I made them both weigh the same amount by getting some epoxy putty, and I put enough epoxy putty on one of the bottoms here, and I got it marginally close. I kind of spray painted it to make it look nice, because no one's ever going to see the bottom. And then I made them both weigh the exact same amount by putting a little bit of a control not duct tape, but foil tape here for doing duct work. I cut just enough foil tape on here to make them weigh exactly the same amount. And I just whittled away at this one, literally cutting off slivers, the microscopic slivers that make this weigh exact same amount. And it's kind of a trial and error thing. It takes a few minutes, but by doing that, I can not marginally speed up my powder dropping rate, but kinda. I could save about, I'm guessing, about 5 seconds per powder drop. You're about to see that here in a little bit. So while I'm dropping powder on one and just dumping powder in the other. But Jim Learn saying, ordered some Mighty Armory dies. I understand very good concentricity of a 0.5 so we'll let you know. Man, if you're getting a 0.5 on every single drop, and you are doing some serious precision reloads, you know, I'm usually happy with about a 1 to maybe 2, maybe a little over 2 thousandths run out on my reloads. Matter of fact, I have a Sinclair Concentricity gauge here. I can actually run some of this here and show you. And some of these are actually seated already. Let me drop this tripod down here and get you up close and personal. So it's the joy of watching the Elfsters channel, as I can move you around and put you wherever I want. I'm in utter control. So let me get this up close and personal for you guys. So this is, if you're not familiar with this, this is a Sinclair Concentricity gauge. It's used to tell run out on your bullets. And usually with my setup here with the Forster press, I like to shoot for roughly, you know, anything, obviously 0 is the best, but, you know, I'll accept maybe 1, 2, pushing about 3 thousandths. I know some guys say total run out, as long as you're not going over 5,000, it's not that big of a deal. So how this works is you can adjust this back and forth. So you can just loosen this up. So lefty loosey, you can loosen this left and right depending on the size of your cartridge. So you can put in your finished cartridge in here just to see how accurate your setup is in regards to your press, your dies, just to see how true they are in regards to the concentricity, or how that bullet is getting seated into the brass. So how that bullet is seated into the brass, if you're absolutely new to the game, obviously you want that bullet to be straight as an arrow as it's coming out of that brass. And a lot of that is in regards to resizing the brass. You can also check the concentricity of the case mouth opening by running this dial indicator on the outside of the case mouth here, right above the shoulder on the neck. But once you seat your bullet, you can also check. You can see this has a little bit of a gauge, and I can spin this left or right. So I can try and do this with a camera in front of me. So you can see this one doesn't have much run out on it. So I'll try and do this my best with a camera right in front of me. So you can see it kind of bottoms out there, so I can adjust this to 0. So that's where it's bottoming out, and I can go up and down. So you can see this one has probably about, try and do this, can't do this with the camera in front of me. So this one has a little over 1 thousandths. So that's almost pushing 2. So let me grab the next one here. So let's see what this one has. So this one has pretty much nothing. So it's bottoming out right about there. So that's not even really reading anything. So I would say that's got pretty much 0 run out. So that's not even really registering 1 thousandths. So I wish this focused in a little bit better. But this, during live feeds, for some stupid reason, my camera doesn't focus in. So that's not even reading 1 thousandths. Let's try this other one. So this one, see, that one bottoms out right about there, so I can kind of readjust it. So this one has a little over 2 thousandths. So that probably bottoms out right there. So that's a little over 1 thousandths of an inch run out. So that's a little over 1 thousandths. That's barely reading. Let's go try a few more here. So you can see it kind of bottoms out right about there. I can adjust that just so slightly. So that's about 1.5. That's not much. So, you know, that's where, you know, using a single stage press comparison to a progressive press, I'm not saying you can't get good concentricity. You definitely can if you set up your press just right. Excuse me. So this one's about 2 thousandths. You definitely can get good concentricity out of your even a progressive press. But that's where a single stage press, something like this Forster coax press, really comes into play. So you can see it kind of bottoms out right there. And you can see everyone is pretty much bottoming out right at the same spot. So it's just really telling me that my reloading setup, at least with my press and my dies, and my reloading process in general, is staying very true in regards to the concentricity of how that bullet is seated into this brass. And this is Lake City brass. It's not like this is Lapua brass or anything. So that's just all about your reloading process, and this doesn't even really register anything. That's not even a thousandth. So I'll do one more. Let's put this one right here. So that one's about 1.5. So yeah, it just kind of verifies your reloading process, your gear. You know, I don't have to say buy once, cry once, but you know, I started out with the Hornady Lino press, and I got very good precision out of it, matter of fact. But I'm, you know, ever since I went to this Forster coax press, I'm really happy with it. Let me get these legs back out here. Let me get you guys up in the sky here. My tripod. So yeah, so let's keep on going here. I'm going to drop some powder here. Let me get a little bit closer so you can see what's going on with this scale. All right, and hopefully this wired lavalier mic doesn't screw around with my scales. Well, I guess we'll find out. That's the thing, is if you're new with these scales, they don't like too much electrical interference, especially my cell phone on a tripod with a wired microphone usually doesn't help high-end scales like this. They don't like too much electrical interference. So see who else is jumping in here. So Drew Bradley is also here saying, just now got the notice. Hello all, hope all is well. Learn some stuff. That's good, and hopefully you guys are spreading this knowledge on the next generation. Emmy, for you and me, said Area 419, there's never anything in stock. Interesting. DMC Racer saying, saw videos of guys reloading primers. Looks like it's very corrosive, not for me. So Kirby Fab saying, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone has a great week. And Thomas Tech saying, what bullets are you reloading? And these are the Hornady 60 grain VMAX. So this is kind of my go-to for stockpiling for my ARs. It just seems like it performs in everything I do. So all right, so let's drop some powder here. I don't know how much more I'm going to drop here, but maybe we'll do, I'm going to do, already dropped powder in these two. I'll set these off to the side. Maybe I'll do 10. We'll seat 10. I'll wrap this up. So I don't want to get too distracted while I'm doing this. Obviously, I'm dropping powder and seating bullets. I got to make sure there is powder in the casing before I seat that bullet. And if you're not paying attention and you seat a bullet in a casing with no powder, you can get what's called a squib load. And that's not good. The primer will ignite, and it has enough force to eject the projectile out of the brass and start that bullet down the journey of going down your rifle's bore, and it will get stuck in your rifle's bore. And especially if you're pulling that trigger ultra fast, trust me, you're not going to have a good day. So I think for this video demonstration purposes, I think 20 should be more than enough. So what I like to do usually before I drop powder is, you know, you might want to just, if you're new, check out your brass. I'm checking out my primers. Obviously the primers are seated just below flush. Some of you guys have seen this before. I like to do the tabletop test. We can slap that brass down on the table and it sits flat and fast really quick. Passing the tabletop test, so the primer's not sticking out of the brass. It's seated just below flush. That way you don't get slam fires. And I'm inspecting my brass, the case mouth openings, and I'm looking down that brass for a couple things. I'm looking through the flash hole, making sure that there's a primer seated. I'm also looking for other things as obstruction, such as any type of dry media. If you're tumbling with dry media like walnut, or especially with wet tumbling with stainless steel media, there's no obviously pin stuck in there. And out of all the years I've reloaded, many thousands and thousands of rounds, believe it or not, I did once catch one single pin stuck inside the case mouth opening that I happened to miss. And God knows what would have happened if I would have seated that bullet, and most likely would have pushed that pin down into the powder, and when I pulled that trigger, it probably would have just expelled the pin out through the muzzle. But who knows what would have happened. Obviously, it's not going to be good, and it's definitely not going to be good for your rifle's rifling. So it never hurts just to quick check it over, especially if you got good lighting like this, or get a flashlight, inspect those case mouth openings, make sure there's nothing inside your case mouth opening. So I got the Bluetooth app here. I'm going to pop you guys out of here just to show you this. Some of you guys that haven't seen this, gosh, I don't know if I can do this now that you guys are corded in here. I'm going to do this as best as I can. So I got the iPad here with the Bluetooth app. You can see that I can enter whatever I want here. So say like I want to enter 23.8, and that's what my info card says. So 23.8 grains of Varget. That's what I have in the hopper here for those that are absolutely new. It's just that easy. And usually what I like to do is I like to get the powder drop to drop just below that if I'm not using a reducer on my trickle tube. Right now I have no reducer on the trickle tube. I do have a reducer if I want to make it even more precise, more anal. I could put that little brass reducer on there. Usually I just don't do it. If it's dropping the powder, it's dropping the powder, as long as it's accurate, and I like it fast too. Just like my women. Just kidding. So, you know, usually if I'm not doing a reducer, and I have notes up here, with reducer and without a reducer. So without a reducer, I like to drop 1.7 grains below my target weight. So if I enter 23.8 grains on my Bluetooth app here, I like to drop, at least without a reducer, 1.7 grains below that. So obviously 1.7 minus out of 23.8 is what, 22.1. So if I can get the initial powder drop to drop just short of that 1.7 grains at 20, make sure you got you guys in the camera here so you can see the readout on the scale. I want that to be roughly about 22.1. So let's test that out before I continue on here. And so I'm going to put my pan in here and make sure I don't breathe on this thing. I'm going to zero this again. And there's a button on here called Cycle Auto Throw. And the auto throw, the main powder drop, drops the main bulk amount of the powder. And the auto trickler here on the side, and like I said, you can't even breathe on this thing. It's as sensitive as my ex-girlfriend. That trickles off the 1.7. So let's hit cycle auto throw just to see if it's roughly about 1.7 grains below the target of 23.8. So it's right in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but remotely close. Let's try that again. So I'm gonna put that back on here, cycle auto throw. So our target's 23.8, and I want it to drop roughly about 1.7 grains below that, and it's right in there. So that looks really, really good. And this is where the magic in the reloading room starts to happen. So that's where I get both my pans here. I already got 23.8 grains set on the Bluetooth app here. I'm gonna hit tap to set target. So it's gonna drop the initial charge and then trickle off the remainder with the auto trickler. And as long as it's within 0.02 grains of my target of 23.8, I'm happy. And this is so accurate that it measures within about 1 or 2 individual specks of Varget powder. Varget powder weighs roughly about, almost 0.02 grains per speck of individual Varget powder. So in essence, if this can accurately read within 0.02 grains, I'm in essence dropping powder, if not, it's probably not one, but at least probably one to two individual specks of powder, and that's how accurate it is. So as long as I'm within 0.02 of my target weight of 23.8, I'm happy. It doesn't have to read exactly 23.8. Like I said, one speck of Varget powder almost weighs 0.02. So that's where this really starts to shine. As I pull this pan off and I put up my other pan that I made weigh the exact same amount. As I'm dropping powder here, that one is not... See, I must be getting electrical interference from this camera, and that's what can happen here. Let me try and back you guys up here, because I got a feeling my camera is screwing around here with the wired lavalier. Let me try this again. They're that sensitive. You got things like LED lighting, you got to be careful of that, especially even cell phones. You don't want them too close to your lab scale. So let's try this again. Just want to make sure you guys can read the readout. That's within 0.02. Matter of fact, that's right on the money. See, yeah, my camera is screwing that up for sure. So I might not be able to do this. I got this wired mic on here, and I got a feeling it's totally screwing with this lab scale, and that can totally happen. You try this again. Otherwise, I might have to do this some other time. Let me get you guys a little bit further away. I got a feeling my cell phone and my wired lavalier might screwing with this thing. Let me try and get away from this thing here. Jeez. Like I said, these lab scales can be more sensitive than my ex-girlfriend here. It's been 0.02. So yeah, I got to make sure you definitely don't have any electrical interference with these lab scales. They are seriously that sensitive. And then sometimes if you get a power conditioner, it can definitely help. But I've noticed you definitely don't want your cell phone too close to your lab scale while you're dropping powder. That's for darn sure. And that's what I'm doing these live streams on. I got a feeling this lavalier mic's screwing with it, with its corded mic. But you can see, once I got a rhythm going on here with the two pans that weigh the exact same amount, you just give her hell. So 0.02. I think you guys could still make out the digital readout. Let me see if I can get you up a little bit higher. You should be able to see it then. Let's see. I don't want to get you too close. Obviously, it's screwing around with my lab scale. So that did overshoot a little bit. That's 0.04 over. So I'm going to dump this back in. Just got to make sure I don't breathe on this thing or get my cell phone too darn close to it. Let's see here. So Jim Lerner saying, sorry, I might have missed it. What type of neck lube do you like, Todd? I actually don't really use much neck lube. I know a lot of guys use neck lube. I just personally don't. You know, just obviously the only time I really lube my brass is when I'm resizing it. I use a combination of Hornady One Shot and Imperial Case Wax. In my opinion, if you don't have Imperial Case Wax in your reloading room, you're not doing it right. You should always be using Imperial Case Wax. That stuff is the bomb, at least in my opinion. I know some guys like to use some type of, right here, I do have some dry case neck lube. Definitely, if you're going for the ultimate precision, I would recommend you could definitely use that. I just don't. I know a lot of guys will mix some of that in with the small beads and dip their case necks in just to lube the neck a little bit for the bullet. And you know, a couple of my good precision reloaders, matter of fact, one good friend, James Phillips, he personally likes to not use wet stainless steel tumbling. This one overshot a little bit. He likes to use dry tumbling just to leave a little bit of carbon in the case mouth opening is a natural bullet lubricant. You know, and I know some guys kind of dip into their own little voodoo worlds of what works and doesn't work. I just personally don't. I just clean my brass and just give her hell. I'm more of a weekend warrior. But yeah, if you got any questions, definitely make yourself known in the comments section. I will try my best to answer them. So that is within 0.02, so that looks good. So I think now that we got the cell phone away from the super sensitive lab scale, we're good now. But yeah, you can see how fast this drops powder, especially with the 2-pan method, trying to get each pan weighing the exact same amount. Those that haven't seen this before, I know some of you guys have already seen this. Yeah, I'll just do 20 here, and then we'll see 20 Freedom Seeds, and then we'll shut this down. So especially if you got any questions, let yourself be known in the chat board here. So that's within 0.02. And it's super quick. I mean, you're watching this live. See here, I think that one kind of went down a little bit. As you can see, this one's 0.04 down. As long as it's down, I can actually trickle off a little bit. So let's see if I can drop one speck there. So one speck there, you can see it went up 0.02. I drop another speck right there. You can see it's 0.02 every time a little individual speck drops. So it's measuring pretty much within one, if not two, individual specks of Varget powder, and that's the speed and the accuracy you're getting with this setup, as long as your cell phone's not too damn close and screwing up the digital readout. But that pretty much goes for any electronic scale, regardless if it's this or a Charge Master. You really shouldn't have any serious cell phones next to it, even though I'm kind of doing it. But what really kills any electronic scale is fluorescent lighting that has a ballast in it. Man, if you have any types of fluorescent lighting with a ballast in it, you know, these LED lights are pretty good nowadays. Matter of fact, I mean, obviously I got LED screen here, LED screen here, LED screen on my cell phone that's taking this live feed. They seem to be pretty decent with these new scales, but 100%, if you have fluorescent lighting with a ballast in it, get rid of that thing. You don't want it anywhere near your electronic scales, for sure. Those things will wreak havoc on your electronic powder drop. So this is the last one here, at least for these 20. So you've seen that I inspected the case mouth openings before I dropped that powder, make sure there's nothing inside that brass. So that's within 0.02. Like I said, I could trickle off one individual speck here. I want to get that super anal. So that's good enough within 0.02. So we got these 20 loaded up, and let's hit this Bluetooth app. You can see it's green. When I hit this, it's going to turn blue. That cancels it. So when I put this back on, it doesn't auto drop anymore. So we're good there. So I'm going to just shut that off. And then I'm going to seat some freedom seats here. Now this is the Forster coax press, where it kind of gains its concentricity as its free float nature. I'm actually going to grab one of these pieces of brass here that doesn't have any powder in it. So I'm going to inspect this. There's no powder in this. And I'm actually, especially for some of you guys that use the Forster coax press, I'm actually using what's called a limiter. This is actually a limiting device. So you can see with a limiting device, my handle only goes to about right here. So I would say it's about a 90-degree angle with the limiter on there. So I could take this limiter off, and you can see how much further the handle has to go to cycle it. And this works great with you know, smaller cartridges, especially like 223, so I don't have to cycle that arm so far. So that works really good. So let me get this piece of brass that doesn't have any powder in it, and I'm going to grab this that we just dropped, and I'm going to check out a few things here. Matter of fact, I'm going to get you guys a little up close and personal here. I'm going to get pointed straight down. And so I'm inspecting my brass, if you're absolutely new, and I'm checking for a few things here. So obviously I'm making sure there's powder in there, but I'm just double checking the powder drop levels. And they all look super consistent. So obviously one doesn't have a way overthrow or underthrow. So you should always check those case mouth openings before you seat those freedom seeds, my friends. So let me back you guys up here a little bit. And I'm going to seat some of these freedom seeds here for you guys. So I'm using no spectacular dies. It's just a Hornady die. But this is the Forster coax press. So it gets some of its free float nature out of the shell plate. It can shift left to right. And also the die is not totally loose in there, but it has some play in there, and it can shift left, front to back. So with the free float nature of this, that's kind of where this whole setup gains its concentricity if you're absolutely new to the game, you're watching my channel for the first time. So usually what I like to do is I like to grab, I'm inspecting this brass, it has powder in it. I like to set these usually off to the right, so I'm grabbing this to the right, grabbing the freedom seat on the left, and voila. That's what's called freedom in action right there. So I'm going to grab my iGaging origin calipers. In my opinion, the best calipers that money could buy under 50 bucks. So if you're just getting in the game, you're kind of strapped for cash, and you're buying your equipment, in my opinion, for $50 or less, these are the best calipers that you can get. They don't take the small batteries, they take the larger 2032 batteries, and the batteries just last forever in this thing. I always recommend using an anvil when possible. So you can see I got an anvil here on the bottom part of the calipers. So I turn on my calipers, I'm going to zero this out. So it is zeroed. And at least according to my Hornady book here, and I'm doing this for those that are absolutely new, I'm just going off a little over cartridge cartridge overall length, recommended coal. And in the Hornady book, at least with the 60 grain VMAX, so the 223 section here, so 223, and I'm gonna, it starts out with 40 grains, so 45, 50, so we're gonna go up to 60, so 60 grains for those that are absolutely new to the game. And we are going to hunt down the VMAX, and what they're recommending is 2.250 for a recommended coal. And if you're new, coal stands for cartridge overall length, and they're recommending 2.25. So I usually go a little over that. I try to push that maximum magazine length more times than not with an AR of some sort. And that's why I like to keep a mag at my reloading bench. You can see I just seated this one. And we're going to check this out. This should be a little over that recommended coal of 2.25. So it's just a little bit over, not much. So 2.2515. And seating my core or cartridge overall length, you're going off the tips of the bullets. The tips of the bullets are usually not the most accurate things. If you can, I would suggest, especially for a bolt action, is to use bullet comparators. So you can use something like a bullet comparator where it reads off the ogive or the secant radius of the bullet itself. I'll try and demonstrate that here quick for those that are absolutely new to the game, if I can find it here. So here's the bullet comparator for 223. You can actually see I wrote 223 on it, so I know it's clear as day what it's for. I actually grabbed the body that I use for my headspace bushings. So you can take that headspace bushing out. Try and do this with a camera and a wired microphone. So I can take this headspace bushing out. It uses the same exact body. So I can put this bullet comparator back in, like so. And with this Allen wrench, just tighten that home. And put this in my calipers. So this is where we're using an anvil along with this body, and bullet comparator really shines. Get really accurate readings. So now I have to re-zero this out. So I got this re-zeroed with the body and the bullet comparator. And this is truly the best way to measure your seeding depths on your freedom seeds if you want the utmost precision, because this rides off the secant radius, or where the ogive of the bullet comes in contact with the rifling's lands. And you can see that this rides right on pretty much the mid distance of where the radius starts and the tip of the bullet, maybe a little bit further back. But you can see how that kind of rides in there. And that's truly the most accurate way of seeding your bullets and reading that measurement, rather than going off cartridge overall length. So this reads, at least with this seeded bullet, at 1.8630. So say like you're developing loads and this performs exceptionally well, and you want to repeat that measured depth. This is truly the best way to do it if you want to get the most precision ammo possible. But for me, this is just, I wouldn't call it spray and pray ammo, but it's a developed pet load that just works well in all my firearms. And typically, more times than not, I'm just going to go off cartridge overall length, which I just shown you in that book was 2.250. So to show you that once more, so 2.251, I usually just go a little bit over that. And I like to do what's called cartridge maximum seating depth. So I'm sorry, maximum magazine length seating depth, where you can see this just barely clears this PMAG. And I wish this could focus in, but it just barely clears. So if it was to stick out any further, it wouldn't feed in the mag itself. So yeah, let me put this in here. And for any weird reason, you're like, man, did I drop powder in that? You can actually take that and shake it next to your ear. And you can actually hear that powder shaking in there. You're like, oh, thank God I did drop powder in there. I don't know if I can pick that up in the mic. Let me see if I can pick this up in the mic here. Can you hear that? That kind of looks bad. That looks bad on the screen. No one better edit that part out and play it a loop. Oh man, that's funny. That's funny stuff right there. So anyway, that's how you finish the rest of these. But yeah, it's easy as that for those that are absolutely new to the game. So I'm going to finish these 20, and I'm probably going to wrap this up. So if you got any questions, let yourself be known, especially if you're new to reloading. And yeah, DMC Racer 321s, I crunch my powder. So yeah, and you can actually hear that powder crunch as that projectile is seated into the bullets. projectile seated into the brass, I should say. So yeah, sounding good. So we're going to wrap this up here soon. So Echo and the Bunny Man said, start drinking age gallon and a half of water per day, and start taking grain supplements. They should help as long as you're not on some type of pain medication. That's an opiate that causes severe constipation. I don't know where you're going with this, man. See here. So Keith, Dr. Baldy 52 saying, why did you go back to the factory straight Forester arms? Just curious. So it's a good question. After a period of time, I'm not saying the old arms are bad. They're actually pretty good. I'm just an anal bastard. And if I see a variance of a thousandth of an inch, I just noticed that the straight arms did produce a more consistent headspace bump results. These were pretty good. I just noticed that there was a little bit of overcamming with these arms, and there is literally no overcamming with the factory straights. You know, once again, I'm probably just being my typical Elfster self of being too anal. But then again, you know, if I'm going for precision reloads, I want the most consistent results. And I tested it both ways. And it's something that you kind of learn over many, many weeks and months and maybe even a year of testing that equipment. And like I said, they're good, but I noticed I was getting, you know, plus or minus 1/1000th of an inch of my target headspace bump. And for most people, that'd be more than sufficient. But for me, at least for me, I noticed, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put my old arms back on, the factory straight arms. And I noticed instantly that my headspace bumps were literally spot on, time after time after time. And there was no, what we call overcamming whatsoever. I mean, it literally just came to a abrupt stop, and that was it. There was no overcamming whatsoever. And that I'm like, you know what? You know, it's nice using these, and I suggest still using them if you want the easy access from the sides. But for me, I will put up with the pain of not having the easy access for the utmost precision. And I just found that these perform better, and I tested them both ways. You know, run a piece of brass and check the headspace and check it on the calipers. Set that to the side. And that's with the easy access. And I'd write that measurement down, you know, plus or minus whatever thousandths of an inch of my target headspace bump. And run another piece, set to the side, measure that. Might be a thousandths over. Next piece, thousandths under. Next piece, spot on. Next piece, thousandths over. Next piece, thousandths under. Next piece, perfect. Oh, okay, fine. Check a whole other cartridge. Do the same thing. You know, 6.5 Creedmoor, different type of brass, and I would do that. And I kept on noticing a plus or minus 1/1000th of an inch. You know, most times than not, that's going to be fine. But for me, if it's not exactly perfect every freaking time, it drives me crazy. So you know what? I'm going to put the old arms back on, and it just literally stopped doing that variance of plus or minus 1/1000th. Every time I pull the handle, it's pretty much spot on. So that's kind of why I went back, just to let you know. So I'm just going to quick double check this, make sure we're good here. So that looks really good. Double check it in my mag. It's good there. So yeah, let's finish this up, and I'm going to wrap this up here, my friends. So like I said, if you got any comments or questions, let yourself be known. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up here really, really soon. And don't forget to smash that thumbs up, especially if you feel like you're learning something. And also definitely make sure you're hitting that notification all. When you hit that notification bell, make sure you hit that notification all, because that does make a difference in regards to getting those alerts when I do go live. And if you're not getting those alerts, double check that notification bell. Make sure you got notification all clicked. Otherwise, you will not get those notifications. And more times than not, I'm usually trying to make you guys aware of a live event, usually in the community section of YouTube, but also my Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook, usually will put on there when I'm going live in advance, usually about 10 minutes. But yeah, make sure you guys are hitting that notification all. And so far, this is going really, really smooth. And I really like this Forester coax press so far. I mean, it's just super concise, super consistent, not only on the headspace bumps, but the seating of the bullets. And you know, I still use my Hornady lock and load press, but it's more for just pistol ammo and for seating primers. That's literally pretty much all I use it for anymore. Unless, you know, shit doesn't really hit the fan and I gotta pump out some serious freedom seeds in a quick hurry, I might bust out the progressive nature of it with the powder drop. Yeah, for 5.56, but usually if I'm reloading 5.56 like I am right now, I'm usually dropping powder with my FX120i, especially when it really doesn't take that long. I'll definitely spend the extra time to get the precision out of it anytime. So other than that, I'm probably going to wrap this up. Let me just double check your comments here, and I'm going to shut this down. So if you got any questions, better let them rip. Otherwise, I'm going to head out here. So hopefully that answers your question there, Keith. So Table saying thank you. And Echo and the Bunnyman saying everyone please give a thumbs up. Definitely hit that, smash that thumbs up. That helps out with the good old YT analytics there for sure. Drew Bailey saying heat treat the curved ones really hard. They won't flex anymore. So that's good to know. So Echo and the Bunnyman saying based ogive length with the Hornady comparator tool works well, especially if you use a polymer tipped hollow point bullet or a red sock point, which could fluctuate 3 to 5,000 of an inch. That's interesting. Variance in length. See here. So Drew Bradley saying in this assumed video, can you dig into primer installation and sizes and types? I just heard the name Bernand and Boxer the other day. So yeah, they have definitely Bernand and Boxer primers. So, you know, you usually want to stay away from Bernand. Usually you're going to get, you want something where it has a single flash hole in the middle. And, you know, I personally like to use CCI primers if I can get them. If I'm in a pinch, I might use other brands, but usually more times than not, I like to stick with CCI primers. You know, I've tried the BR2 bench rest primers, and yeah, you might see a little improvement on that, but at least for me as a weekend warrior, typically more times than not, I'm just sticking with the standard CCI 400s for example, 223, or CCI 200s for like 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor. Like I said, right now I'm still not, like I said, I'm using the Hornady lock and load progressive press for decapping, using the FW Arms decapper, best decapper and that money could buy for roughly 50 bucks. And I have a video showing you how to use this auto centering decapper that I've yet to bust a pin on. I think it, don't quote me on this, but I believe it takes 10% off with free shipping, or 10 bucks. I can't remember. I know it's in the description box of the video. It's also in the video itself. So check out that video list if you're interested in that. But I use this for decapping, priming, and doing pistol ammo pretty much. Everything else is on the single stage, especially for precision rifle. So, so yeah, definitely you want to stay away from, you know, usually you're going to see the Bernand primers, they're going to have those 2 holes rather than 1. And you definitely don't want those. It's going to be hard for your single pin that's directly centered in the middle to knock out that primer, and you're going to have a very bad day. And it's pretty rare to see that anymore, especially if you buy quality brass. They're not going to have that. That's just really old military brasses. More times than not, you're going to see that. But just check your brass. If it's got one single hole in the middle, that's what you want. Make it, for layman's terms, that's the route you want to go. So 4-7 Cab saying thanks for everything, Todd. I'm glad you can join us. See what else we got here. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. So Bald and Curious saying, so why and how often you need to anneal? So that's definitely a good question. It's a question I get quite a bit, especially now that I'm selling the EP Integrations 2.0 Annealer with my good friend Scott Peterson and EP Integrations LLC. The reason, first and foremost, I anneal every single time. I would recommend, if you don't anneal every time, is to anneal every other time. I wouldn't go any further than that personally. I know it'd be really wouldn't be much of a reason to go past every other time. Like I said, for me personally, especially the EP 2.0 annealer, if you get the flame length just right, hot enough and close enough, usually you want that hotter blue inner flame to be about an inch long, maybe a little over an inch. And usually I'll try and get that hotter blue Corona inner flame. And I'll grab one of these pieces of brass that doesn't have any powder in it. So I'll usually get that hotter blue inner flame about a little over an inch long, maybe about 1 1/8 inches. And I'll get that so the hotter blue inner flame is not touching the brass. You never want the flame to actually touch the brass. You can get what's called hot spots on your brass, where the annealing marks will creep down further on one side in comparison to the other. But I'll get it so it's damn near touching. Not touching, but damn near. Like I'm saying damn near, like a 1/16 of an inch off. And I'll get that hotter blue inner flame hot enough, and I'll get it centrally located also, so the flame envelops the top and bottom of the brass itself, and get that hotter blue inner flame pointing directly where the neck meets the shoulder. And if you get that set up just right, and if you use this, I don't expect you to do it right out of the gate, but after you've used this a few reloading sessions, you'll learn the methods to its madness. And more times than not, at least with 5.56, usually I'm in the 40s, low 40s on the digital readout. All that digital readout is amount of voltage going to the motor. It's either 0 voltage or 100% voltage going to the motor. And all that display does is gives you a reference point of whether or not you need to slightly increase or decrease the speed of, or the amount of time that the brass is in the flame. And more times than not, with at least 5.56 or 223, and I've counted this before, if you get it set up just right, and usually the readout's in the low 40s, it takes about 5.5 seconds per anneal. Usually 308 parent cartridges, 308, 243, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6 Creedmoor, blah, blah, blah. If you're not familiar, they're all kind of copying the 308 base family cartridge. They're usually in the flame for about 6 seconds, maybe a smidgen over 6 seconds. But once you learn its methods to its madness, roughly 6 seconds per anneal, it just doesn't take that long to do. Especially for a precision reloader that more times than not is only reloading in 50 to 100 piece increments. Like I said before, with 223, it's pretty rare for me to clean brass, size brass, trim brass, drop powder, seep bullets at more than 100 pieces. Usually it's a 100 piece ammo box. I'm usually reloading in increments of 100. And the reason I always tell this with the new reloaders, don't go hog wild crazy. I've seen this time and time again. They'll get 1,000 pieces of brass, and the first thing they're like, oh my God, what I got to do is resize all this brass. Every single piece of brass, 1,000 pieces, I'm going to resize every single piece, 1,000 pieces. I'm like, slow your roll, man. Slow your roll. Don't do all 1,000. You're new, okay? pull 100 out of the 1,000. And there's a couple reasons why you're going to do that if you're new. Is the worst thing you can do is resize all 1,000 because you're gun-ho and you can't wait to get it resized. And I always recommend that the new reloaders not even do 100. Pull 50. Maybe, heck, even do 25. Increments of 25 more times than not. Ammo boxes can hold 100. Or 20, or whatever. And start out small and learn. And check your headspaces. Maybe, and I've always recommended this before, especially for bottleneck rifle cartridges, is I don't use a case gauge. I sold my case gauges eons ago for my bottleneck rifle cartridges. I reload from my rifle's chamber. I don't reload for a case gauge. I personally would want to get that piece of brass that was fire out of that firearms chamber, and when you pull the trigger and that trigger sear releases and the hammer goes home on the firing pin and ignites that primer and ignites the propellant and pushes that bullet down the rifle's bore, that brass is malleable. That's why they use brass in ammunition, because brass can expand and contract easily. And that brass with 50,000 psi will expand to the rifle's chamber in custom fire formed for that particular firearms chamber. Not your friend's Remington 17, not your friend's Remington 700, but your Remington bolt action. Because his headspace might be a couple thousandths of an inch different than yours. And you're going to get that piece of brass, and that piece of brass that's ejected out of that firearm, its fire form is like gold. It tells you everything about the firearms chamber. And you're going to get that piece of brass that's ejected and is now fire formed for that particular chamber, that particular rifle's chamber, and you're going to measure that with your headspace gauges. And then you're going to bump that back more times than not for a bolt action, 2/1000 of an inch, or 3 to 5/1000 of an inch for a semi-automatic. And it's all about consistency. And that's why I don't use a case gauge. I use bump gauges. And I see these guys that they'll resize 1,000 pieces of brass, and then they'll anneal 1,000 pieces of brass. And I'm like, just slow down, man. Just slow down. You're new. Just pull out 50 and just start from there. In a couple of reasons. So you're learning. You don't destroy, oversize 1,000 pieces of brass or not size it enough. And every single firearm is different. And you want to get that brass custom bumped for that particular firearm. At least my opinion, if you want precision ammunition. It's one thing if it's spray and pray ammo. You might want to just do SAMI minimum specs. But if you want a precision ammunition that's specifically bumped back 3/1000 of an inch for semi-automatic, roughly 2/1000 of an inch for a bolt action, you want to go slow and just pull out 50 pieces and feel comfortable that you're resizing a piece. Measure every single piece that comes out of that resizing die and make sure that you're getting consistent headspace bumps. Not where one has a 3/1000 bump, one has a 5/1000 of a bump, because you're not either lubing your brass correctly or you're not running your press ram just right. That's one of the worst things you can ever do as a new reloader, is just resize an entire batch of 1,000 pieces right out of the gate. Unless you truly know what you're doing, or you're truly creating spray and pray ammo, and you're setting that down to minimum specs, and that's what you're doing with a case gauge. But with that being said, it doesn't take long to anneal. At roughly 6 seconds per anneal. Obviously, if I'm reloading 50 pieces of precision 6.5 Creedmoor, I've said this before and I'll say it again, 50 pieces at 6 seconds is only 300 seconds, or exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the reloading process is a little drop in the bucket, and it really doesn't take that long. That's why I do it every single time, to not only increase the longevity of the brass, so you get less split necks on the case mouth openings, but I do it more for consistent headspace bumps. When I'm resizing that brass, I'm lubing it correctly, I'm running my press ram correctly, but I'm also using the annealed neck now that softens the brass, because what's happening is when you fire that brass in that firearms chamber, that brass expands with roughly 50,000 psi, and then it shrinks ever so slightly, and it's ejected and it's thrown out on the ground. You pick it up and take it back to the reloading room, you reload it, and you knock that shoulder back again, and you're doing what's called work hardening the brass. And a lot of guys call it case hardening, but it's actually work hardening. And you do that over and over and over. And if you don't anneal, what's happening is you're going to work harden that brass to the point where it's getting somewhat brittle, and you're going to get inconsistent neck tension. And then you're also going to get inconsistent headspace bumps. And you're destroying the consistency of from round to round, because that brass is getting work hardened, and one might have a particular amount of neck tension more than the next because you didn't anneal it. And that's where annealing the brass softens the brass, so you're getting that consistent neck tension, you're getting the consistent headspace bumps, because so every single piece has exactly 3/10 of an inch bump back from fire form. So you might see this, and I've seen this before, especially when I didn't anneal, is, man, I'm trying my best to get the most consistent headspace bump when I'm running that brass to the die, and I swear to God, no matter what I do, no matter how I run my press handle or lube my brass, I'm shooting for a 3/10 of an inch bump, but one's getting 2/1000s, one's getting 5/1000s, one's spot on, one goes a little bit low, one goes up. If you're seeing that, you might want to try annealing. That can definitely help that situation. And not only that, but the consistent neck tension. So if one piece of brass has more neck tension than the other, the one that has more neck tension is going to create more pressure inside the brass, and it's going to create more velocity in comparison to the next one, and that's going to hit paper higher than the other piece of brass that you just reloaded. And that's why you reload. And when you reload, you anneal, in my opinion. And like I said, it only takes 5 to 6 seconds per anneal, and it doesn't take that long. That's why I do it every single time, above and beyond increasing the longevity of the brass itself. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. Kind of went on a little tangent there a little bit. So, so Elser, the slight bend in the arms on the coax cause variations in depths of seating in the concentricity. I've discussed this with the makers of the Forester coax, which I own as well. That's good to know. So old brass doesn't tend to show a tarnish. So are you saying old brass has a tendency not to show anneal marks? I think that's what you're trying to say. That's a good point. If that's what you're trying to say, is when you do anneal, different types of brass will show different types of anneal marks. And I've said this before, and I really want to get this point across, especially for those that are just about to purchase, regardless if it's the EP 2.0 annealer or any other annealer, especially if it's flame-based, is if you buy brand new brass, and that brand new brass has been sitting around for a little while, it's been sitting in the packaging for over a year, and it's had some time for, it's still pretty clean, it's still kind of shiny, but it has a little bit of a slight dull to it. It's had a chance to have some oxidization happen to the exterior of the brass perimeter. And that type of brass will show a very heavy anneal mark. Like, especially if I was to grab this Starline brass, it's brand spanking new. So if I was to grab this Starline brass, it's brand new, never been fired. But it's been sitting in this box since it's been opened, and the oxygen has had a chance to get to it a little bit. It's not tarnished, but it's had a chance to somewhat oxidize a little bit with some tarnishing. This will show an amazing anneal mark. Guarantee it. If I was to throw this on an annealer, it would show the most beautiful anneal mark. But if I was to take this exact same piece of brass and I was to throw that in my Frankfurt Arsenal tumbler with some Lemmy Shine and Dawn and run it for about an hour and a half, and I took it out and I dried it in my Lyman Cyclone case dryer, that exact same piece of brass, I almost guarantee money, won't show any anneal mark at all. Now you got to keep that in mind, especially if you're new to annealing and you're about to anneal and you're like, God, what the heck's going on? Why doesn't my brass show any anneal marks? And that's why, if you just freshly cleaned your brass, it will barely, if not show any anneal marks whatsoever. So you got to keep that in mind. Just because it doesn't show anneal marks doesn't mean it isn't annealed. And that's why I like to personally use the glow method, because a couple reasons. The glow method is super quick. There's little to no screwing around. I can get to annealing within seconds. And I know the template guys come out of the woodwork and they jump down my throat like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But there is one video out there, and I highly suggest you check it out. And it's called the Primal Rights. I think it's called the Primal Rights Annealing. Just YouTube Primal Rights Annealing. And there's an amazing video on there from Primal Rights. And it shows you not only why he uses the glow method, but it shows you how to use the glow method in regards to getting that brass in the flame, consistently in the flame and out of the flame, to the point where the neck and the start of the shoulder just starts to glow and you get it out of the flame. And it's an amazing video. And that's actually how I learned many, many years ago, was I learned from that video. And I've kind of expanded that glow method with using test brass, where I use test brass that I was throw away in the bad brass bin here. And I use some of that brass before I throw it away to not only set the location of the torch, but the timer on the torch, or the annealer, I should say, to get it marginally close. So when I actually anneal that very first piece of actual brass I'm about to reload and anneal, that it's marginally close, so I don't damage that very first piece of brass by over annealing it. And also keeping that very first piece of brass consistent with the remaining pieces of brass that I'm gonna anneal soon after. And yeah, I really went on a tangent there, didn't I? So hopefully that answers your question of why I anneal. So, well, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I think that was a really good reloading session. And hopefully some of you guys that are absolutely new learned something. I know I do. Every single time I reload, I learn something, and I try to expand that information on to not only you guys, but hopefully you're taking that and spreading that knowledge, very valuable knowledge, onto the next generation. Because when you go fill out that ballot and you put it in the ballot box, usually that's only good for 2, maybe 4 years, depending on who you're voting for. And the only way you're truly going to protect your rights, so you can vote until you're blue in the face, is you're going to have to pass that knowledge on to the next generation. Because that's truly how you're going to protect your rights. Because once they absorb that information, they want to spread that information on the next person. I don't really get too political on this channel, but that's exactly what the other side's doing. And I hate to see that in our schools. And that's exactly what's happening, is they're not taking in this information. And hopefully you guys are taking this information and passing it on to the next generation, so they can pass it on to the next generation after them. Because that's truly how the Second Amendment is going to be protected, my friends. So I'll see you guys in the next video.